Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes Hong Kong stocks slide amid mainland funds selling, weak Tencent earnings. What is the state of mainland China's business environment for Taiwanese firms? Hong Kong ousts Dubai as biggest hub for Russian gold trade. Bond investors turn from China property to Macau casinos. China housing gloom worsens as prices fall, most in 8 years. Hong Kong stocks slide amid mainland funds selling, weak Tencent earnings. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong stocks fell as mainland Chinese investors sold shares ahead of the earnings reports of major tech companies. The Hang Seng Index dropped 1.8%, while the tech index lost 2.6%. Tencent's third-quarter earnings fell 9% from a year earlier, causing its shares to fall by 0.6%. Alibaba Group shares also tumbled by 2.5%. Despite a 6.2% rise in November, the market has struggled due to China's stop-start economic recovery. Retail consumption has risen, but manufacturing has shrunk and deflation has deepened. Mainland investors sold 9.5 billion Hong Kong dollars, $1.2 billion, of shares in Hong Kong on Wednesday, the most in over 2 months. What is the state of mainland China's business environment for Taiwanese firms? South China Morning Post. Taiwanese companies operating in mainland China are facing a complicated and unpredictable business environment, causing frustration and complaints among business owners. Taiwanese firms have complained about increased bureaucracy and additional checks, especially during periods of heightened tension between Taiwan and mainland China, such as elections. Despite these challenges, Taiwanese businesses are unlikely to seriously consider leaving mainland China due to the size of the market and geographical proximity. Some Taiwanese companies have accused Beijing of politicizing trade and complain of being given the cold shoulder at international trade expos. The number of Taiwanese exhibitors at the China International Import Expo has dwindled in recent years. Beijing has launched a probe into Taiwan's trade barriers, causing further uncertainty for Taiwanese firms. While Beijing has attempted to attract Taiwanese enterprises through integration plans and promises to improve the well-being of Taiwanese businesses, many Taiwanese companies remain skeptical. Nonetheless, most Taiwanese firms are hopeful that cross-strait ties will stabilize following the next election and have no intention of leaving mainland China. Hong Kong ousts Dubai as biggest hub for Russian gold trade. South China Morning Post. Russian gold trading has shifted from Dubai to Hong Kong as U.S. sanctions on Russia's top gold miners and a crackdown on illicit activities in the UAE's bullion market have impacted trade. Hong Kong imported 68 tons of Russian gold this year, 4 times as much as the whole of 2022. Meanwhile, the UAE has seen a significant decline in Russian gold imports due to regulatory cleanup and increased oversight on bank transfers and cash payments. China has also expressed its desire to boost trade with Russia, making Hong Kong an attractive hub for gold trading. Bond investors turn from China property to Macau casinos. Nikkei Asia. Macau casino operators are attracting attention from the bond market as their creditworthiness improves due to a recovery in tourist numbers. This comes as Chinese real estate companies, which have had a significant presence in Asia's high-yield bond market, face operational uncertainties. The prices of Macau casino bonds have risen recently, and their creditworthiness has been recovering, with ratings upgrades seen for some operators. However, companies with low credit ratings may face heavier interest payment loads if the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates. Macau casinos generate sales mainly from mainland Chinese tourists, so there are concerns that a slow economic recovery in China could hinder further revenue increases for the casinos. China housing gloom worsens as prices fall, most in 8 years. Bloomberg. China's home prices fell the most in 8 years in October, signaling that the property slump is worsening despite government efforts to revive demand. New home prices in 70 cities dropped 0.38% last month from September, the steepest decrease since February 2015. The property market downturn is dragging down China's economic recovery, and stimulus measures introduced since August have failed to turn it around. Only Tier 2 cities saw a narrower price decline due to looser home buying restrictions. The second-hand market also experienced a decline in prices. Global banks criticize South Korean short-selling ban as phantom farce. Financial Times. Global investment banks have criticized South Korea's blanket ban on short selling, which came into effect on November 6 and is due to last until June 2020. The banks claim regulators have conflated illegal and legal short selling practices to appease voters ahead of parliamentary elections in April. They argue that the ban will make it harder to value listed companies and deter international investors. The banks also argue that the ban will undermine South Korea's ambition to be upgraded to developed market status by leading index providers. Capital calls, Hwarong. Reuters breaking views. China Hwarong Asset Management, one of China's bad banks, has changed its name to China CITIC Financial Asset Management after its top shareholder, CITIC Group. CITIC has held a 26.5% stake in Hwarong since a government bailout in 2021. Hwarong has been struggling financially, with heavy exposure to China's struggling real estate sector, contributing to a net loss of around $4 billion in 2022. The name change may make it more difficult for CITIC to distance itself from the troubles facing Hwarong. Additionally, Hwarong bought a 5% stake in CITIC's Hong Kong listed unit at a 30% premium to Wednesday's closing price. Why veterans' Olympic move almost certainly spells the end to glittering Wallabies career. ABC. Michael Hooper, a former captain of the Australian national rugby union team, has joined Australia's Rugby Sevens squad in order to compete in the 2024 Olympics in Paris. Hooper, who has won the John Eales Medal 4 times, will join the Sevens program full-time in January 2022 and hopes to participate in the inaugural Perth SVNS event. The move likely marks the end of Hooper's international ambitions in the 15A-side game. Australia's men's team has already qualified for the Olympics, and the SVNS series will serve as preparation for the tournament. The first 4 episodes of The Crown's final series drop later today. Here's what we know about them. ABC. The final season of royal drama series The Crown will feature the dramatic climax of Princess Diana's death, with the first 4 episodes being released on November 15. The show is a blend of history and fiction, based on real characters and events, but with added creative imagination. The season will be divided into 2 parts, with the first covering Diana's death and the aftermath, while the second will focus on the Queen reflecting on her life and the future of her successors. This will be the last season of The Crown, with no plans for a 7th season. Netflix set to release final season of The Crown. BBC. The final season of Netflix's hit series The Crown will focus on the events of the late 1990s, including Princess Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed and the aftermath of her death. The show has faced criticism for historical inaccuracies, with a royal historian saying that viewers expect a certain degree of accuracy. The new season is split into 2 parts, with the first 4 episodes released on Thursday and the final 6 episodes to be released on December 14. The Crown has been hugely popular since it first aired in 2016, and has been praised for its high production quality. China traders sell shares in Hong Kong amid city's rebound. Bloomberg. Investors in mainland China are skeptical about the sustainability of a rebound in Hong Kong's shares. They sold $1.2 billion worth of stock, the highest amount since mid-September, despite a 4% rally in the Hang Seng Index. Onshore traders have bought a total of $39.3 billion of equities in Hong Kong this year, roughly on par with purchases in the previous year. They bought $49.5 billion in shares on a net basis in 2022 and $59.3 billion in 2021. Biden, Xi agree to revive high-level military channels as they seek to mend relations. The Globe and Mail. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed on measures to stabilize U.S.-China relations, including restoring high-level military communications and addressing the illicit production of the opioid fentanyl. The two leaders held a meeting on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, during which they discussed the need for direct military contact to prevent accidents and misunderstandings. They also agreed that China would take steps to prevent the shipment of chemicals used in fentanyl production to North and South America. In addition, the leaders agreed to work together on discussing risk and safety issues related to artificial intelligence. Despite the cooperation, Biden emphasized that the U.S. and China remain rivals. Protests took place in San Francisco during the leaders' meeting, with some participants calling for freedom for Tibet and Hong Kong. The meeting comes as economic ties between the U.S. and China have frayed and tensions have escalated over issues such as Taiwan, the South China Sea, Hong Kong, and Xinjiang. Asia stocks waver, expectations of Fed pause intact after data. Yahoo! Asian stocks markets were struggling for momentum on Thursday, following heavy gains this week, as expectations for a pause in Fed policy tightening remained intact despite strong U.S. data coming out this week. Australia's Michael Hooper switches to Sevens rugby, eyes 2024 Paris Olympics. Associated Press. Michael Hooper, the former Wallabies captain, has announced that he will shift his focus to rugby sevens in order to compete at the Paris Olympics next year. Hooper, who was controversially left out of Australia's Rugby World Cup squad, has signed up to play in the newly revamped Global Sevens series ahead of the 2024 Games. The 32-year-old hopes to play in his first tournament at the inaugural Perth Sevens event. Hooper's decision likely means the end of his national ambitions in the 15A-side game. Australia's men's team has already qualified for the Olympic competition. Well, folks, it's your friendly neighborhood 6 doctor here, bringing you the latest news from the world of 6 degrees. Let's dive right in, shall we? First up, we have some news from the Hong Kong stock market. Stocks fell as mainland Chinese investors sold shares ahead of major tech companies' earnings reports. Tencent, one of China's tech giants, saw its third-quarter earnings fall, causing its shares to drop. Alibaba Group shares also tumbled. This decline comes as the market continues to struggle due to China's stop-start economic recovery. Moving on to mainland China, Taiwanese companies operating there are facing a complicated and unpredictable business environment. Increased bureaucracy and additional checks have frustrated Taiwanese firms, but they are unlikely to seriously consider leaving mainland China due to the size of the market. Some Taiwanese companies have accused Beijing of politicizing trade and complain of being given the cold shoulder at international trade expos. In other news, Hong Kong has overtaken Dubai as the biggest hub for Russian gold trade. U.S. sanctions on Russia's top gold miners and a crackdown on illicit activities in the UAE's bullion market have led to this shift. Hong Kong has seen a significant increase in Russian gold imports, while the UAE has experienced a decline. Now let's talk about Macau casinos. They are attracting attention from the bond market as their creditworthiness improves due to a recovery in tourist numbers. Chinese real estate companies, on the other hand, are facing operational uncertainties and have seen their presence in the bond market decline. However, concerns remain about the slow economic recovery in China potentially hindering further revenue increases for the casinos. In China's property market, home prices fell the most in 8 years in October, signaling a worsening property slump. Despite government efforts to revive demand, the market continues to decline, dragging down China's economic recovery. Only Tier 2 cities saw a narrower price decline due to looser home buying restrictions. Moving on to South Korea, global investment banks have criticized the country's blanket ban on short selling. They argue that the ban will make it harder to value listed companies and deter international investors. The ban is set to last until June 2020. China Huarong Asset Management, one of China's bad banks, has changed its name to China CITIC Financial Asset Management. Huarong has been struggling financially, and its exposure to China's struggling real estate sector has contributed to its losses. The name change may make it more difficult for CITIC to distance itself from Huarong's troubles. Now let's turn our attention to the markets. Asian stocks have fallen, and the US dollar has strengthened. Traders took profits after the Xi-Biden meeting and weak housing data in China. There are concerns about the sustainability of the rebound in Hong Kong's shares, as mainland Chinese investors remain skeptical. In sports news, Michael Hooper, a former captain of the Australian national rugby union team, has joined Australia's Rugby Sevens squad in order to compete in the 2024 Olympics in Paris. This move likely marks the end of Hooper's international ambitions in the 15-a-side game. On the entertainment front, the final season of royal drama series, The Crown, is set to be released. This season will focus on the events of the late 1990s, including Princess Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed and the aftermath of her death. This will be the last season of The Crown, with no plans for a seventh season. And finally, US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed to measures to stabilize US-China relations. They discussed the need for direct military contact and addressing the illicit production of fentanyl. Despite the cooperation, Biden emphasized that the US and China remain rivals. Well, that's all for today, folks. Remember, the Sixth Doctor is always here to bring you the latest news and analysis from the world of 6 degrees. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you make of the Hong Kong stock market struggles? Are you excited for the final season of The Crown? Let's get the discussion going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6do Brief via email.